Hello, and welcome to Levels Plus Whenever episode 159. I rearranged the back a little bit for the winter season. Today we're going to be jumping into another looking back episode for the latter half of the 2000s. But first I've got pickups and got Amiibo. I got the Metroid Prime 4 Samus Amiibo, both of them. Here's regular Samus and Samus on a bike. The quality on these are both really nice. And you know me, I had to get the Metroid Amiibo. It took me forever to get the rest of the ones that I didn't have from the Smash line, but thankfully this wasn't really a big fight. I also got Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment for the Switch 2. Haven't started that yet, but I have started Absolem. This is a wonderful game. Feels great, looks great, wonderful soundtrack. Everything you would want in a beat 'em up, honestly, with roguelite elements that make sense. And a progression system that makes sense for the combination of those two concepts. I'll probably do something more elaborate for that game in the near future. But I am pretty strongly feeling it's going to be number 3 on my Game of the Year ranking. Unless Age of Imprisonment or Air Riders or Prime 4 Beyond sneaks up and is a better overall experience. But very, very happy about that. Let's get into looking back, shall we? Hello, and welcome to another episode of Looking Back. And we're going to tackle the latter half of the 2000s. And I was thinking, as I was putting this list together, this was a really fascinating decade in a lot of ways. We went from the Dreamcast, the PlayStation, and the N64, all the way up to the PlayStation 3, the Xbox 360, and the Wii. Went from GBC to GBA to DS. There's not even a Game Boy Advance game on this half of the decade. I still was doing a little bit of PC playing at this point. You see Age of Empires 3 and Sam & Max Save the World, but in comparison to the first half of the decade, I really backed off on that. EG as well counts as a PC game. But I would say that in a lot of ways, I was disappointed in at least Nintendo's output this half of the decade. You'll notice there's not a ton of their output here, and I really had to think hard about what to include because their emphasis on motion controls on the Wii did not really connect with me all that much. And a lot of their more touchscreen heavy content on the DS also didn't work well for me. So they are probably at their lowest point in terms of quantity on any one of these lists. They're still pretty heavily featured, but only one game in the top slot for Nintendo is a little odd. And like the top 3 only has 1, 2, 3. That's even odder. All right, well, let's just go ahead and jump in with 2005 and Resident Evil 4. My favorite in the franchise, my second favorite with the remakes included, because I think RE4 Remake is a successful reinvention of this game and irons out a lot of the latent sexism that was in this game. I still think RE4, despite that problem, is a phenomenal game and truly a genre-defining and even industry-defining release. Easily one of Capcom's most important releases. It redefined what a 3D action game could be by moving the camera directly behind Leon, maintaining that tank control aspect, but just reinventing how the camera worked with it was ingenious, and it really would go on to define that style of game to this day, honestly. I don't think it's truly been done better. And it's got such an iconic list of enemies and bosses, great set pieces. Leon is a great character, even better in the remake. I think this is where I really liked Ada more than any other game. I think she really came into her own in RE4, and again, I think the remake does it better, and Ashley is definitely better in RE4 remake. But I will say that the Sadler performance is still unrivaled by the remake. The remake went for a different direction. It works well for the angle they were going, but there's just something truly memorable and timeless about the Sadler performance in the original game that the remake doesn't have, and that's really the biggest knock I have on the remake is they didn't get the Sadler personality the same, because it was really good. But I love this game still. I think the Wii version's the best way to play it, but I didn't want to include it in the Wii selection. I wanted to include the original version because it's probably one of the games I played through the most is RE4 in its classic and our remake versions. I have played that game so much. Number 2 is King of Fighters 11, which will likely be the highest an SNK game will get on the list moving forward. I don't foresee 15 getting up to second place in the year it was released, and that's going to probably be the last game that I even consider from SNK because of their current situation being really, really bad. But let's not reflect on the present. Let's look at 11, which was truly the pinnacle, I think, of the King of Fighters series for me personally. I love the fact that it incorporated a tag element. I think that worked really well for it. It introduced some really cool characters. Oswald is one of my favorite KOF characters. I do kind of dig the aesthetic that they went with. It's an interesting choice because it feels kind of sterile in some ways, but it still has some panache to it. I do wish the backgrounds were a little bit more dynamic. But I love the art. I think that the gameplay is a lot of fun. It's just, for me, the high point of the mechanics of KOF coming together for me. And I really, really think it is among SNK's best work, even though the true legacy of SNK had mostly left at this point. This was a separate team, to my understanding, because this was the Playmore era. But still, I think that this was easily SNK Playmore's best work, and something that they should be really proud of because it rises to the level and exceeds a lot of what came before it. The rest of these are not on my top 111 list, but I will talk about Hulk Ultimate Destruction, which is one of the funnest licensed games of all time. I'm not the hugest Hulk fan, just generally speaking, but this game truly made you feel like you were just this unstoppable force trapped inside of a human frame. Able to do so much cool stuff. Smash cars into fists that you could use as gauntlets. You could throw street lamps like javelins. You could jump off of a building, fall like 20 stories, and do an elbow drop on some bad guy. You could grab a helicopter out of the air. A really fun, flexible combat system. The biggest issue with Ultimate Destruction is that the deeper you get into it, the harder it gets to fully engage with its fun mechanics. Because the enemy AI gets to be too aggressive and too aggro. And it just makes the simple act of what made that game so successful more difficult to fully appreciate and enjoy. But on the Rest of the content is fantastic. I really do like Ultimate Destruction a lot. I think it's a lot of fun. It's got decent voice acting, a decent plot line. It looks pretty nice for a multi-plat game. But it's really the controls and just the sensation of feeling like the Hulk that no other game has managed to pull off as effectively. So it's one of the best superhero games of all time. Burnout Revenge, I never played 3. I only started with Revenge and I haven't gone back. But I do really like Revenge. I think it's one of the best racing games that I've ever played. Dragon Quest Heroes Rocket Slime is a really clever and fun take on the franchise. You get to do Zelda-like exploration, and it's paired with this very mechanical tank sequence where you have to get ammo and load it, and then you can go over to the other tank and sabotage it while your tank's fighting it, and you have to prevent the enemy from doing the same to you. It's a really great mix of genres, and it's a lot of fun, very well written, very charming. 2006, Okami, sitting at spot 110. It's gonna fall off the list at some point. It's a fantastic game that has some big flaws. Over-ambition, honestly. Clover just stuffed that game with too much stuff. It needed to trim like 3 arcs, and it probably would have been a very much improved game. Fighting Orochi 3 times is really annoying. Having to do a boss rush at the end is pretty annoying. Isun, the character, is a sexist piece of crap. He does have a redemption towards the end, but he's still really, really annoying in that context. And it's kind of hard to overlook that since it's such a prominent part of his character. But outside of those major issues, I do think Okami stands tall in Capcom's au revoir of games. It's got such a strong artistic style that transfers really well to the music. It's a gorgeous game to look at, especially in HD, and it takes its own spin on the Zelda action-adventure concept and does it really well. It just is bloated and kind of mean. But I do think it's a phenomenal game, and I am pretty excited about the sequel. I just hope that they can not have an annoying side character and they don't make it so long. On the flip side of that, we have Portrait of Ruin, which is a game that didn't have enough development time, and yet is still, I think, the best of the DS Castlevanias. I think the dynamic between Jonathan and Charlotte is fantastic. It's a lot of fun, and I really like Charlotte's gameplay because it's so different from the rest of the Castlevania lineup to that point. It just is a little bit more strategic and thoughtful. You have to think about how much you need to space your character to pull off your spells at maximum capacity, and I really like that element. The level design is creative in terms of where it takes you. It decides to pull you out of castle environments to go explore in some different areas, like a circus or a Victorian street, which I think is quite nice. The biggest issue with Portrait of Ruin is that it just is not done. They had to kind of stop what they were doing, so a lot of the more grandiose ideas never got put in. I remember that there was going to be more to do with Charlotte than there actually is. And, like, there's a frog spell that was supposed to be a much bigger piece of the game, but it's not, and among other things. So it's just one of those games where they ran out of budget and they needed to ship it. So they closed off a lot of gaps and basically doubled they reused their 4 portrait areas as a harder mode to kind of justify things and move things along. But there's a lot of sprite reuse, there's a lot of just like the general level design, the map element is pretty generic and not that dynamic. Ultimately, Portrait of Ruin is a phenomenal game with a great soundtrack and it's a step in the right direction after Dawn of Sorrow really stumbled a lot trying to find its way onto the DS. But it's still not as good as Aria, and it's still not as good as Symphony. But I think in terms of the Metroidvanias, it's a solid third place. Zelda Twilight Princess. This is the GameCube version, not the Wii version. I really like Twilight Princess, despite it too has some bloat issues that it didn't need to have, especially when it revolves around Wolf Link and bug hunting. Zelda just couldn't resist having these collectathons, it seems, in that era. But everything else I feel is pretty great, outside of the lack of connecting to the world. And what I mean by that is I really feel like in comparison to Ocarina of Time, where you got a chance to meet all the peoples in Hyrule and learn about their plight and go and help them, it really feels like Twilight Princess has less of an emphasis on that on the whole. Like the Zora, you get a really good chance to meet with them and connect with them. The Gorons a little bit, but it just doesn't feel the same as Ocarina to me. I do find the art style fascinating in Twilight Princess because they went hard on making some very disturbing looking hilly. And I kind of appreciate that. I like the soundtrack a lot. There's a lot of elements about Twilight Princess that I really like. And I still feel it's a top 3 worthy release. And I think it's 6th or 7th on my overall Zelda list, which is a video that will be coming up at some point. But it does have some stumbles that I think could have been avoided. Sam and Max. This is the original 6 episodes of their revival. I still think these are really good. I have it on the Switch now, and I finally finished the entire season. At some point, I'll get the other 2 seasons. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But I do think that this is very funny, and it's generally well done. There's some times where the puzzles aren't very clear, or you just are wandering around aimless for a bit. But beyond that, I do think that these are extremely well made and just a delight to play. Persona 3 is high on this list considering how much I hate Fez. Fez ruined this game for me. I really got into Persona 3 when it came out in 2006. And I loved it. And then Fez came along and completely took what I had gotten out of the storyline and made it worse. So I was very disappointed, and I still think Fez is a really bad extension of Persona 3. So I have no plans to get the answer for Reload. I will be just happy keeping Persona 3 Reload by itself, which does seem to be a very solid and worthy remake of this game. But mechanically, I like it a lot. The art style is fantastic. It's got a really outstanding vibe to it. It's one of the most stylistic games I've ever played, which Reload continues quite nicely. It's just one of those things where it's like you get to a point in a game and it does something that just turns the key off for you. That's what happened, and it would probably be higher on this list if it wasn't for Fez. 2007. Let's move a little bit faster because I'm running out of time. Problem with recording these before I go to work. Hotel Dusk. One of my favorite Nintendo games of all time. It's sitting at number 11, I'm pretty sure, on the list. Phenomenal game in terms of art direction. I love the puzzle design. The music's great. It's really well put together. It's the best game on the DS that shows what the full breadth of the DS was capable of with touch controls and just being really clever with how the system worked as well. Like you flip a puzzle over by closing the DS lid, which I just think is so cool. I miss Sing. I really do. The Another Code Recollection that came out last year at the time of this recording really made me happy, and I really hope that Hotel Dusk gets a chance to come back because it's a really great game that I think more people need to play. It's also exquisitely written. One of the best written narratives I think I've come across. Portal. What a game. Truly redefined what a first-person shooter could be and how puzzle games could be interacted with. Just so inventive, and it still blows me away playing it in its sequel now. How transformative that Portal mechanic truly is. It's mind-blowing even after you've experienced it the first time. The biggest issue with Portal is you'll never be able to regain that mind-blown element ever again because you know how it works. But once the very first time left such an imprint that it's still really high on my list. Apollo Justice Ace Attorney, still my favorite in the series. I just think that the way that the art style comes together in Apollo Justice, being the first DS-specific game in the series, and the only one, outside of the Investigations spin-offs, what gave the game such a huge visual increase, and just the characters look fantastic. I love Apollo and Trucy. I think that Gavin's a great antagonist that is unique and not in an annoying way. Just a really great set of cases on the whole. Apollo Justice brings so much to the table to the series, and I feel like 5 and 6 couldn't quite figure out how exactly to follow it up as successfully as 4 did to the original trilogy. While they are still both good to excellent games, I do feel that there's just something really special about Apollo Justice that brings the Ace Attorney concept to its fullest potential. None of the other games quite hit the same for me. I love that series to pieces, don't get me wrong, but I do think that Apollo Justice is the pinnacle of that concept. Dragon Quest IV, I'm including it here for the DS because it added some content that wasn't in the original, and I didn't feel right including the original because I haven't played it on the NES or Famicom. I played it on the DS. So that's why I'm including it here, but I think it is a fantastic remake that does a lot of good QOL. Sounds funny to say it out loud like that. Quality of life to the game, and it's written extremely well. Perhaps goes a little bit too hard on the different accents to try to differentiate the cast, which I think the series kind of walked back a little bit. But I think 4 is where modern Dragon Quest, along with 8, really establishes itself. I just think it's a fantastic series, and you'll see that we're going to be talking a bit more about it later on. BioShock, one of the last first-person shooters I really felt a connection to. Fantastic atmosphere, art design. I do wish that I didn't have to do the pipe dream minigame all the time to hack stuff. But other than that, I really like it a lot. And I think it's definitely one of the more memorable games of this era. 2008, Dead Space. EA had 2 games show up in this particular year that I think are excellent. And it kind of blew me away because EA has not really been on my radar in the grand scheme of things for since the PC days of the 80s, honestly. But Dead Space is just a fantastic sci-fi horror action game that has one problem that really stopped it from being top tier is turret. There's a turret minigame that is atrocious and awful, and it really brought the game down. Isaac not having a personality in the original Dead Space is also unfortunate. I think it hurt the game's narrative threads quite a bit to not have a character that actually interacted with the rest of the cast. The remake resolves both of these problems and is, at the moment, the best Dead Space game. in my opinion. It's even better than 2, just by a hair, because it's so polished, and Isaac is actively a part of what's happening. And I like how they got around the turret minigame and put in something that makes a lot of sense once it clicks. So, still, the original Dead Space is easily one of EA's best things that they couldn't resist screwing up later. But we'll get to that when we get to 2 in the next episode. Dragon Quest V. Another remake for the DS of the Super Famicom original, and again, it's here because it added enough content to make me feel that putting the Super Famicom version that I never played on here was a disservice. This is my 3rd favorite Dragon Quest. I want to say it's actually might be my 2nd. I think 8, 5, and 9 is currently the top 3. It's got probably the best story overall. It's got a really compelling family arc that goes from when the protagonist was a child to being an adult to handing over the lineage to his children. It's just great. The battle system's fun. It adds a nice set of wrinkles to things to keep it interesting with the monster dynamic. It looks great. It's just, and it has the party chat feature, which DQ4 localization dropped, which was a mistake. So they fixed that, and it's just a great game all the way around. Castlevania Order of Ecclesia, the last Castlevania that's going to probably be on my list. That's kind of sad to think about. Definitely a step in the right direction for the series after 2 anime-coded entries that really didn't need it. It's more gothic with the art style, which works really well for it. But it again ran into budget problems and has probably the worst map design of the entire Metroidvania lineage. But Shino is a great character with a great moveset that's sort of like Soma's, but sort of like Alucard's put together. It has a really unique feel. It's like the most Simon's Questy of the Metroidvanias, which I think works well for it. And it's just a good game. It's a really good game. It's also challenging in a way that most of the other Metroidvanias have not been. Persona 4. Persona 4 is probably the game I have the most feelings about on this entire list. And I don't want to get into it all here. I will probably at some point do a breakdown of why I have feelings about Persona in a video or in an article in a more detail than I have done in recent times. I will just say that Persona 4 in 2008, before I had fully completed my education and really embraced who I currently am in terms of how I feel about the world and people, felt really diverse and open and welcoming to a lot of different themes to me. Naoto being a trans character, Keiji being a gay character. The problem with Persona 4 is, in hindsight, it's actually not that progressive, and it actually kind of tries to fix, in quotations, those characters. And that's a problem. That's not how it should have operated. And it kind of sucks a lot of the vibe right out of Persona 4 about being liberated and having free opinions and choice. It's really unfortunate. There's so many good things about Persona 4. I love the visual aesthetic. The music is the best of the entire series to me. I like a lot of the characters. I still really like Chie. It's just got these tendrils of unfortunateness that have clung to it. Teddy and Yosuke are also problematic characters in many ways. that just makes me not ever want to re-engage with it unless they do a reload situation and iron out a lot of the problems that they invented for themselves with their characterization choices. And the Valkyria Chronicles, really good strategy game that I'm going to start from the beginning because I got about halfway through on the PS3. I have it on the Switch now, and I want to start it from the beginning and actually sit down and finish it at some point in the near future because it's really good. It's got such a strong artistic style to it, but I dropped it and I not picked it back up in like 6 years, and I need to do something about that. 2009. Let's wrap this up real fast. Dragon Quest IX. Really great game. One of the best DS games, without question for me. I love the way that this game has the party system so loose and dynamic that you could really just have fun doing that element alone. I was able to create a team of Black Blood characters and have them wander around in this space. It was a grand time. I like the combat engine a lot in this game too. I think it's one of the best in the series. Visually not the strongest game. I do think that I like the aesthetic of 4 and 5 a little bit more than the 3D that they did in 9. And unfortunately, a lot of its really strong elements of connectivity and playing with others are lost. 9 desperately needs a remake, remaster, more than any other game in the series, I would argue, other than 8. But I will always argue for 8. A Boy and His Blob, one of my favorite Way Forward games. I think this was a brilliant reinvention of the flawed NES concept. I call it a concept because it doesn't feel like a full game, and sometimes it just really feels like a wandering around and hoping that you don't run out of beans situation. This game is visually charming, has a great soundtrack, controls extremely well, it's not too punishing, and it's a lot of fun. I think it's easily among Way Forward's strongest efforts in their entire history. I really can't recommend it enough. I still have it on the Wii. I haven't updated to the Switch because there's just something so Wii about it that I don't really want to upgrade it. I want to have it in that physical context on that system. And then Sin and Punishment Star Successors, the final game in the top 3. I think it's Treasure's best work, personally, outside of Gunstar Heroes. I think the art direction in this game is phenomenal. I love this art so much. I think it's got a great soundtrack. It controls extremely well. One of the best uses of Wii motion controls. Absolute stunning game from start to finish. Really cool level design and boss creativity. It's just a great game, and I wish more people would play it. Unfortunately, it's stranded on the Wii U and the Wii at this point, but I can always hope that it will get a chance to live again on the Switch too. Batman Arkham Asylum is the best of that bunch for me. I never played Night. City, I think, is good, but lacks some of the nuance that I think Arkham Asylum has in terms of feeling very Metroidvania-like, which I really enjoyed. I wish the misogyny in this game was toned down so much, as well as in City, because I will never go back to it. I can't get over how Poison Ivy and Catwoman are visually depicted and treated by the NPCs in this game. It is so bad. Harley's also pretty bad too, but not as terrible in my opinion. Yeah, it is not a good space to be a woman in the Arkham games. Considering some of the things that have come about Rocksteady, that's not shocking. Muramasa the Demon Blade. This is another Vanillaware game. This is my second favorite of all of their games that I've played. Mechanically, fixes a lot of what I had issues with Odin Sphere. Visually remains as stunning as Odin Sphere. It's more narrative issues. I really wish Momohime wasn't controlled by a dude. that kind of soured me on it long term, because I just wanted her to be a strong sword fighting character herself and not be manipulated by the demon of a sword master who's using her for his own ends. Just kind of shitty, honestly. Outside of that, though, I think everything else about Muramasa is phenomenal, and I would probably pick it up if it got a re-release on a modern platform. It's the only one that hasn't, and it's because Atlas wasn't involved with it. All right, that is the end of the 2000s, and we'll pick up this sub-series in December. All right, I will see you in the future for the next episode. Thanks, friends, and take care.